The man thrust his hands vigorously into the concrete floor. Then he recited an incantation, and his hands were violently fired. A powerful force instantly erupted from the ground. Then the sand transformed into countless warhorses. With a roar, they rushed into the sea. Then the man clenched his hands again. Together, the horses crossed the sails of the ship. In an instant, the ship was easily righted. Finally, the man clapped his hands and walked out of the sight of the audience in style. And he is one of the last remaining wizards in the world. Jonathan. However, there are many problems with the popularity of people. Jonathan's rise to prominence soon attracted the attention of the Earl of England. The Earl proposed to Jonathan that he be sent to the front to help his country fight the French army. Jonathan, who wanted to serve his country, immediately accepted. But what he didn't realize was, when he and his servant traveled all the way to the battlefield, he found that he was not well received by the soldiers. The generals don't even care about him. His only role was to help the soldiers read letters from their families. But in a casual conversation with the soldiers, he overhears them complaining about the difficulty of walking up the mountain. The Adidas he had just bought were about to break. To prove his worth, Jonathan suddenly had an idea. The next day he took his servant to the mountain. He picked up a stone from the ground. He followed the instructions in his magic book and began to recite a spell on the stone. But nothing happened. He let out a breath of immortal air and tried the spell again. But after a few hours, the stone still didn't change. He threw down the stone in anger. Then he turned around and left. But the stone suddenly split in two as it shook. Then the whole mountain shook. The two men turned around. They saw countless rocks bursting out of the mountain. Then it automatically converged into a road that stretched along the mountainside, thousands of kilometers away. Soon the soldiers were on a smooth road. The general was so pleased that he named Jonathan Merlin Mage. But what Jonathan didn't expect was that the general seemed to think he was omnipotent. He asked him to move an entire forest. But Jonathan said that forests are not rocks. They have their own consciousness, and it's not easy to move them. But the general was adamant. Jonathan had no choice but to comply. So the next day he was led by his soldiers to the oldest tree in the forest, because he was going to negotiate with it to move.